All right. I think we're live. I think we're live. Hello, party people. We are in the place to be. Welcome, SOLI Deo Gloria. Welcome, beautiful soul. Appreciate you joining me. Whew, bit of a morning for me. We talk about this a few times, and I think it's good to kind of come back to some of the basics, I think, sometimes. And something that a lot of people, this very sensational title of the most important question ever. Luckily it's not my question. So it's just my opinion, we could say, that this is the most important question ever asked. And actually it's Einstein's opinion as well. So we'll start with that. And then I'll go through the initial chapters of awakening as I've come to know them. And how this initial question actually ties back into all of this. It might be apparent to you already. And so if this is a review for you, that's great. But, ultimately I'm trying to show where we are as a consciousness now so that people get it. And kind of understand in the consciousness itself, in their consciousness itself, where things are going and how they go there and sort of the progression that they take. And everyone's sort of on their own time frames. Luckily, there's, essentially a sphere of consciousness that contains this, we could call it an experiment of consciousness, that allows us to shift from third density, fourth density to fifth density, or fifth dimension, and by activating fourth density consciousness, or 5D, fifth dimensional awareness, Christ consciousness, is essentially the way that is we can look at it, but it's confusing. So Christ consciousness is probably just the easiest way to say it, instead of all the frequency and all the vibrations and the densities and the dimensions. That confuses things a lot, at least for me in my mind. I try to keep things as simple as we can. But because of this facilitation, or the convergence, harmonic convergence that started, I think, in the 80s, precipitated by energies brought in essentially through the hippie movement, the peace movements. That's what sort of seeded the ground for the volunteers to be able to really take root. In order for the volunteers to come, they have to really densify their condition, you could say, and to be able to enter. And so the more frequency that was raised back then allowed for, an easier time for the volunteers, you could say. So that's what happened. And so now we have essentially souls just all over the spectrum as far as their evolutionary tangent, you could say, where they're at as a soul. And as a collective, we're all in it together as well. So one of the first things is, if a soul isn't ready to incarnate and ascend, we're going to hit a point where we're going to stop having third density souls birth here. They're just not going to be born they'll be born either third and fourth density dual activated bodies, or they'll be born as a fourth density body. And a fourth density body will last really long times. So this will happen eventually. But all of this is going to happen over time, over a lot of time, probably. As we get into the, there are people that are clearly, we can observe, they're completely psychopathic, right? And this isn't meant to be a judgment against psychopathic people, but there are people that are clearly totally psychopathic, right? Those people are not likely to be negative enough to graduate into fourth density negative. They're not positive. They're not acting positively. They're not serving others. So they're serving themselves, but not purely enough, probably. It's really actually challenging to serve yourself purely enough. They still will do stuff basically to make their lives more comfortable, but like they might help people, for example, and stuff like that, to fit into society more and things. So, but those people will essentially, if they can't graduate positive into fourth density positive or into fourth density negative, they're going to end up reincarnating into a third density experience. The Earth and this solar system, essentially, not just the solar system, the universe entirely, goes through cyclings of birth, death, and rebirth, where it's all collapsing on itself and coming back and doing that again. So they'll most likely just go to the new third density Earth. There'll be like a new experiment of Earth, and they'll continue basically where they left off. They might actually wipe the slate clean and start again, probably from the beginning. I'm not certain on how that would happen. It may depend. It may depend on the soul. Essentially, like, it's not generally great for the soul to feel all of the weight when it's just starting new life, like to feel all of the weight from the past Earth, right? That may not necessarily be relevant in the new third density Earth that they would eventually migrate to. And they would just actually incarnate on it when it's birthed. And I'm not sure what that timing looks like or anything. I don't see any like cataclysmic type event that would cause anything like this, because it would essentially wipe out everyone pretty much, because most of us are either third density or third and fourth density activated bodies. So the third and fourth density activated body is still the third density vehicle, or this chemical body, is still attached and tethered to the fourth density body. So if this were to just rip apart or die apart, the entity would seem to die, basically. So they're just as susceptible, essentially, to the third density illusion as a third density only body. And a third density body can open the heart. It's potentiated, and they can transition into that, having a dual activated body. So that's what's happening, is that souls that are ready, they come out of the sleeping state by activating the heart and the fourth ray. This process can be like really dramatic or really big, or it can be slowly over time. It really depends. But so in the sleeping state, it already has various stages of development within it. Egoic activity, we could say, like egoic patterning and conditioning is happening. And, not all unconscious or sleeping behavior is like negative, right? So this is where the development happens of the mind, where it's essentially learning to discern between like what is true and good for others and good for the self versus what is bad for others and bad for the self. It's like it's literally in duality learning this. And so it's going to try to orient itself towards truth, or it's going to get spooked and keep falling into fear. And its consciousness will essentially raise until eventually it passes this threshold of where it sees truth properly, and this is where it starts to find courage. But it's still really asleep. It's still in the illusion a lot. It's still very tethered to all of the illusion. So it's okay where everyone's at. There could be people that are watching that are in that boat right now still. Although in that boat, people wouldn't be aware necessarily of what that means, right? So anyways, most of the people that are watching on here are going to be in this next phase that I get into after this one. But the soul's just traversing its path of learning. It's still generally unaware of what the spiritual journey even is. Like, so there can be very religious people in this zone. They can be people that call themselves spiritual that are here. There are people that call themselves psychics here in this sleeping or unconscious place. There's any number of type of person we could think of could be in this place, even like someone like Freud. Freud was essentially, because he was unable to accept that there is a God or a creator, essentially plateaued at 499 on the consciousness scale, which essentially means that he wasn't able to find love properly. He wasn't able to find love. So if God doesn't exist, if there isn't a creator, then love doesn't come. We don't get the true experience of love. So because of that, the consciousness gets limited. So even Freud was asleep, basically, is what I'm saying. We cannot be awake if we do not recognize divinity in some fashion, even if it's just saying it's nature or life, the universe. We don't have to say it's like an entity, because the creator being, God, isn't an entity that we can fathom the way we consider an entity to be. So we don't have to call it anything specific, but we do have to recognize it's there. And that brings me to Einstein's question, and then I'll continue on with the chapters of awakening. I just call them the chapters because it's a book that never ends, right? It's the never-ending story, right? We're all Atreyu fighting the nothing, right? More or less. But it's a never-ending story of imagination. The imagination doesn't work properly when the nothing is getting all in the way. So I'll bring up this quote from Mr. Albert Einstein, which, it's so funny. The universe is so beautiful, because I was actually thinking, literally before I knew Einstein said this, maybe 6 days ago or so, 5-6 days ago, something like that, I was like, oh, really the core of it is this particular question that the seeker has to answer. I should do a stream on that. I wrote it down or something. I'm like, I got to talk about that. But then the mind carried me other places. I got distracted. And so the universe kindly reminds me, just through, I don't know where it came from, like a post on Instagram or something, who knows, but kindly reminds me that this is an important topic. And I'm like, wow, Einstein was saying what I was saying. Or I just had the thought, right? And so a lot of us have had these thoughts, but I'm not trying to like, oh, I'm so cool. It's more about the synchronicity of the universe, like making sure that what the creator or universe wants expressed gets expressed, right? Somehow. And Einstein's already said it, but we're putting new spins on it, which is what consciousness always does as it evolves on itself, right? So Einstein said, I think the most important question facing humanity is the universe a friendly place? This is the first and most basic question all people must answer for themselves. For if we decide that the universe is an unfriendly place, we will then use our technology, our scientific discoveries, our natural resources to achieve safety and power by creating bigger walls to keep out the unfriendliness and bigger weapons to destroy all that which is unfriendly. And I believe that we are getting to a place where technology is powerful enough that we may either completely isolate or destroy ourselves as well in this process. If we decide that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, and that God is essentially playing the dice with the universe, then we are simply victims to the random toss of the dice, and our lives have no real purpose or meaning. But if we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we'll use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding that universe, because power and safety will come through understanding its workings and its motives. God does not play dice with the universe, right? So a lot of scientists don't bring God into their work, which is insane, right? That's what the asleep mind does. It sort of excludes divinity, however we call it. But if we have problems with the word God, we should look at that as well. I know that in some Gnostic stuff, they essentially try to teach that word is like somehow a bad word. I think it's all about intention and what we're actually calling God. We're not referring to some type of anthropomorphized God that lords over us and controls us or something, right? We're just not dedicating anything to that or any type of weird situation like that. It's a frequency of love. That's all it is, really. It's not a thing, not a being, really. Though it is. When we have the experience of God, we'll have our own sort of flavor of it, right? It'll show up however it does. The Holy Spirit essentially takes some form to show itself to you. But that's part of the awakening journey, that will happen. It's like inevitable, basically. It's inevitable that will happen. Um, so the reason that that question is the most important question, I think it's sort of becomes clear by what I was saying before, is essentially, yeah, if you don't believe in God somehow, some form of that, of ultimate power, creator, force, power, that is, you don't have to believe God's benevolent, but you have to believe God's there. Otherwise, God, essentially the Holy Spirit's like, can't invest you. You've denied it, right? Oh, the other really, really important thing, this is something that becomes apparent. The light that we see in the other, the Christ in the other, is never asleep. That part of us is never, ever asleep. So when we start to have the Christ recognitions, or we see the Christ in others, because we've seen the Christ in us, we start to see it in other people. And I've talked about that a couple times on the channel, where we're like, usually we might have immediate like breakdowns and stuff where we're like very emotional over it. The first couple times this happens, it's like very profound, deep, and emotional. And then it becomes more common. But when you begin to inquire about this within yourself, of like, oh, what am I seeing exactly here? You're seeing awareness, you're seeing God itself in them, which has always been wide awake. Sometimes in the experience, it's very challenging to see that, depending on essentially how cleaned up and masterful we are with the mind. More or less is what governs our perceptions. Believe it or not, the mind already knows what it's going to think about something you haven't looked at yet. Believe it or not, like that's how it works. Like it's essentially a catalog. So it has like, almost like you have a Sears catalog, right? And you open the page and you look at a sofa or something. I don't even know if they sell sofas there, but you look at a couch or something, and you already have it's already called this. We have it listed as this color. It's this. It has these characteristics. That's what that is. So prior to even looking at something, you've already presumed it. So in the awakening process, which is the next step, is first it has to come through accepting that there is a creator or source, frequency somehow. Somehow there's a creator spirit force. Because also, if we don't do that, then we're not able to detach from the body either. So there's a whole bunch of like, that's why it's a prerequisite. And why the question of is God good or not really is the question, right? So when Einstein's saying, is the universe a friendly place or no? It's like, is the universe who birthed us, the Logos, the God who birthed us, created us, is that a benevolent being? If it's a benevolent being, then this is where our absolute pillar of faith comes into play. Because as we traverse the awakening, we have to like have some safety somewhere. We have to have some thought, usually, or in this case, it's an opinion. This is the opinion of duality, actually, that we end up transcending as well. We transcend this concept of God being good or bad, which is one of the things we do when we actually cross the abyss. And if you're interested in that, there's a lot of different work on that already. Initiates and or adepts in different areas have already written a lot about that process, but that's a process that eventually will happen as well. The individual will essentially, without getting too specific about anything or any particular path, they'll essentially encounter their own manifestation of what death looks like to them. And this happens, it can happen in an infinite number of ways. They'll experience somehow their dyingness or confront that. And this is sort of the depth of that dark night generally happens when we're so tired and deciding that we have to just go as deep as possible. That tends to be when these things pop up. So it can show up manifest in the life, but it also can be astral experiences or emotional experiences of like being shown visions and different. It can be very, very unique. It can be out of body experiences, near death experiences, all these different things. Or it could be someone that we even really hold dear to us having a very close call of some kind, really gets us to really consider deeply our existential feelings about death. Karmically, we all hold like terror about death, generally. Lots of terror about it. The animal in us knows what death is, has learned of death for many millennia, right? So that's part of that awakening process. And usually, like, until someone's done that in some form, they're probably not able to get to that awake state. Not quite yet. But in awakening, the individual, like, they begin to attempt to craft a happy dream. This is where they're still sort of in and out of a haze. They have to realize a few different things. So they'll generally start to try to craft a happy dream and try to, they may not necessarily feel that they're in a dream yet, but they usually progressively figure that this is a dream that I'm in, actually. And so they begin to want to be able to become lucid in the dream, the same way a dreamer who wants to become lucid does so in the dream. They condition the mind, right, to know that it's in a dream. So you do the same thing, essentially, in the reality to awaken to that. But they have to realize the inner deceiver. They have to realize that they aren't the body. They have to realize the timeless or eternal presence that's there. They have to discover that, feel that, experience that. And then they're going to try to bring all of these realizations into their happy dream. And this is really important. It's their happy dream. And I'm sure we can all resonate with this. Like, we have things in our life that we want to do or see or experience or whatever, right? And as we're awakening, we usually still have a lot of opinions about how reality is supposed to go, how the life is supposed to go. We're still kind of usually holding on to a bunch of stuff. And so depending on what of that stuff is aligned with us and what isn't aligned, we have to discard things. So we end up drawing all these lessons to us to let go of different things so we don't have to worry about those things anymore. And the more that process happens, the more we start to be able to let go, loosen the reins, so to speak. Like, we're like, oh, okay, I don't actually have to hang on to this ride. It's actually quite smooth if I just sit back and let the river take me where I'm going. I don't have to resist all of what the universe is doing because I believe in a benevolent God and a benevolent creator. Nature itself can only expand and only tries to give itself life. So, that must be love. So, hence, I'm okay. And, I can just let the universe show me what I'm to be engaged in right now, right? Like, if something comes up, this must be the thing I'm meant to be involved in right now. Of course, that is a balancing act because there are things we're also supposed to learn to say no to, right? This is the awakening part. We're meant to learn how to say no when stuff's getting unconscious and strange, or learn how to bring love to that and just transmute the whole thing into like some type of miracle. Basically, not that we perform a miracle, we just become miracle conduit. Miracle will happen. The miracle will happen without us, more or less. The less involved we're in the struggling, the drama. So we start to learn how to actually hold this peace when like our best friend is accusing us of something terrible, perhaps. We learn that, oh, my poor friend is in a state of fear, and it's very unfortunate that it seems to be unfortunate that they're pointing it at me. But they're not actually doing that. They think they are. They think they're blaming me, and they think that, whatever. But what I'm aware of is that they're upset with themselves for forgetting. They're forgetting right now. They're afraid. They're upset with themselves about something. That's really what's happening. So we start to be able to transcend the drama. The drama doesn't faze us as well either at these points, where we start to realize even the people we're very close to that are being dramatic, it's not as phasing. Now, even our children. There's something about children screaming and freaking out that is grating, right? For a lot of people, myself included. But nowadays, I don't have that trouble as much. I still do occasionally. I'm like, wow, this is like a lot of stimulation, all this chaos, and they're all yelling at each other. They've gotten into a thing, and someone stole something, and all this. So in our awakening, we have these encounters like this, and we're like, what in the F am I supposed to do about all this? I can barely even focus on like who's talking and what's going on, for me anyway. It's just total stimulus overload. And I have to sort of just step out of that and just ignore all that and just start acting to dissuade the situation, right? Just 1 second, I need a drink. Very thirsty. Very thirsty. So in the awakening aspect, which is usually like at least several years, like usually it's a process of years that we're going through this comprehension that the reality is kind of backwards, and we're learning about all these spiritual concepts. We're beginning to build a relationship with God. Hopefully we get to a place quite quickly where we trust in God and actually can start to have, like, the more trust we have in God and faith, the more we actually start to hear the guidance much closer, much more like real, you could say. And it's literally just because we believe it. We believe it could happen, that God is speaking to me. We believe that that's possible. Now, we have to be careful, because this is where messianic narcissism comes from. God is telling me what to do, therefore all of you are wrong. God told me, rah, rah, rah. So this is where it gets a little dicey. The waters get a little dicey, because when we have these experiences where we're like, oh, God is talking to me, it can sometimes be very, very profound and feeling very powerful. Like, I'm pretty friggin' special then, right? Like, those thoughts tend to occur here and there. We want to humble ourselves, because no, we're not special. We're just getting out of the way a little bit. That maybe that's what might make us a little special, is our ability to get out of the way and hear God. And our faith is being sort of rewarded with a response in this way, we could say. And we don't want to elevate ourselves at all. We want to literally remain meek, remain humble, but also know that of course God's speaking to me, of course. Of course. God's speaking to everyone all the time, and just people have trouble hearing it. That's really all it is. God's generally speaking through our heart, through our soul, speaking to our soul, which communicates to us through our heart. And then as we expand, we start to hear that more clearly, like what's actually going on here with us. What's actually happening? What am I doing here? Right? It starts to become more clear. We stop having so many questions, and that's when we start to become awake. After we confront that death couldn't be, there's not really anything to fear, we will snap like purely awake. And sometimes we go back into more of the awakening stage. So it's not uncommon for people to pop awake, go cross the abyss, have this big experience, but then still get sucked back in a little bit to illusion and stuff. It's not that uncommon. And the reason for that is because we are generally wanting to come back. We want to go up and come back. is generally what we're all wanting to do, the volunteers anyway. There are other beings doing other different things. But we want to become awake in the dream lucid. And most of our activity then is done sort of with a centered presence that intentionally we know that this is the thing to do. Like, we're not really questioning our directions, that we're feeling in flow with the universe, sort of, is the way to describe that. We're just feeling in flow with what's going on. Very few thoughts, if any, of harmful or opinionated type things. You know, they could still present, but it's more of a, do we go down that road, you know, any major amount of time? We start to be not concerned with crafting our dream, like the dream that we are dreaming. We are not trying to create our own mind's dream. We're content now to be as the dreamer is calling for us to be. The dreamer being God, the dreamer itself. Of all of this, what's that asking of us right now? God, what would you have me do? Is more of the orientation. What would you have your child do today? What's best for your child today? That type of orientation. What lessons do I have today? Like, we're still learning as well. That's the other important part. Still learning, still evolving. This is just the place where we're probably going to feel a lot of peace, kind of regardless of what's going on. So they're knowing that we're safe and we're just free to be ourselves. That knowing that we're safe and free to be ourselves lets us be uncertain about everything as well. So the mind, we're aware that the mind doesn't know what it thinks it knows, which is what lets spirit share true gifts of knowledge or true purposeful spiritual truth, which will almost definitely inspire those people to try to share that somehow, like through writing or speaking or doing something, or even just dedication to serving a certain population type, a subset of population. You know, generally we all have these soft spots in our hearts for people that went through things we went through in this lifetime or others, right? So it's one thing to be aware that you're not the body, right? That's one thing, to wake up to that. But if we don't believe in God and we start to think we're not the body, we can go into some wacky places. If we don't believe in a creator, that's what gets us sucked into some wacky stuff. And it's not about punishment. It's about, if we go that other way, we're going into this path of like more illusion. So we're really choosing between truth or illusion. Playing in the illusion more, pretending to be God, basically, is what we're starting to go down that road. If we're able to awaken and then still are still thinking that way, then we're trying to orient or considering orienting ourselves to trying to be God itself, which is you know, it's a way to go. It's a way to go. But that's what that whole awakening stage is about our establishing a relationship with God. And sometimes people choose to take, or souls choose to take, these like oppositional or confrontational stances against God, as if God has done something wrong. Usually that's where it's built from, is that they believe their parent or creator has done something wrong to them. So they want to become more powerful and not have to abide in that authorship or that story. It's kind of like the idea of us making robots that take us over, right? Kind of like a similar idea. Like the goal starts to be to try to overcome the higher entity consciousness that created the lower entity, or the lower consciousness vibration. And then it's another thing to be aware that like God is, and then another thing to be transcendent of opinions of duality or the illusion of separation. To not let these things sway you, to be not attached to the reality around us, but to come back into the illusion, to participate in it all, knowing what we've seen, knowing that it's a sort of drama of pretend separation happening. And I can actually, now that I know that, it's almost like I got kind of superpowers, right? Like I'm very aware of what's happening, and yeah, like we start to be able to see the reality a lot more clearer, which helps us. We're not scared of stuff really. So we're playing. The dream becomes the happy dream because we become lucid in it, and because we're in flow with what the dreamer itself is dreaming, we're not resisting life anywhere. Whereas before, we're trying to craft a happy dream, our concoction of a happy dream, which is essentially built from our opinions of things that may or may not be in alignment with creation, or what we are calling for collectively or individually, or, like, if like your deepest desire is to be a musician of some kind, the universe might not really let you succeed in some other things. Like it might these blocks might come up or something, right? Just as an example, to try to push you into the music. Oh, I might as well try. I've tried everything else. I can't keep a job, blah, blah, blah. And then someone finally just goes, hey, why don't you always loved music. Why don't you try your music? And then from there, everything explodes. Like that type of stuff happens where it doesn't seem like anything's out to get you. Nothing's out to get you. And it's all done in your highest and best. What you truly always wanted to do was to play music. So, the universe sort of might gently or less gently, depending on what the soul is planning for, direct us that way. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. And thank you guys for listening for so long. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump into the chat now and see if people have anything to say. E says, Lion says, this is a good topic. I'm all ears. Thank you, Lion. That's a cool name. E says, they don't make scientists like Einstein and Max Planck anymore, discussing varied concepts like quantum theory and consciousness. Yeah, they don't really. Like scientists, I think I said that earlier, like scientists often just take God out of it completely, which just, it's okay. Like they can do what they want. But if they're trying to make their theories without the inclusion of a creator, then it's never going to really make sense properly. Not properly. It's not really going to be true. It's just going to be some stuff that the mind's made up about things, more or less. And it will seem to be true to other minds that believe in the stuff that they've all made up together. That's most of like the science nomenclature too, like making new words and stuff. It's very it's like adorable to me now. And I don't mean that in like, what's the word? Is it facetious? I mean literally, it's impressive and amazing to me, the capability of our mind and how much we can trick ourselves into thinking that like by making new words and making up new concepts that we're actually like improving things. And sometimes we are, sure, sometimes. But generally speaking, Einstein said as well, like now that we're on Einstein, he said the mind that created the problem can't resolve it, right? And what he's saying is like the way of thought that created separation, like if we take it to that, put it to that context, separation like can't be resolved by minds that think in separation and think generally rejecting God. Like honestly, how often do most people go around in their day wondering what God would want them to do right now, every moment? Like, people don't do that, really. And if they do, they don't talk about it, right? Most of them, right? People don't want to hear about God. They don't really want to talk about it. They don't, there's a deep, deep, deep wounding there for so many reasons. And most people blame religion, but it's not just that. It's the separation itself. Almost all of our souls here are like, have this like little rage. They have this rage that sits from the separation. Usually it's blaming God for allowing this to happen. That type of thing. Allowing it to feel like we're separate. At the soul's perspective, it's like there's learning that happens there too. So I'm still trying to discover exactly what that looks like. I want to make a bit of I'm just talking about like we just create new things and I'm like, oh, I'll make a new model. That's what we need, right? A new model. Yeah, that's what we should do. Make new models and stuff. I'll make a new word. We'll call it Awakening V2 version 2. 2.0, like Web 2.0, Web 3.0, whatever it's at now. That's what we'll do. Spiritual Awakening 2.0. Or we'll call it 11.11. That's the version. But it's important, actually, we can jump back to some of the ancient traditions and initiations and things like that. And it's really funny that humans thought back then as well that they were the ones like orchestrating their initiations. Like consciousness, essentially, like consciousness opens up when it's ready. And it comes about in whatever way. So they they group together as initiates and will to have this experience of crossing the abyss for this new initiate that they're bringing in, or this adapt, and they're all working together to try to help that happen. For example, or someone's just like on a boat and looks up at the moon and just goes blasts awake. It's the same thing, right? It's really interesting that the humans thought that they're like doing stuff to make it happen, when it's really just the universe is making sure that this popcorn's about to pop. So whatever in the illusion has to happen to make that occur, whatever manifests for that, or whatever's going to be manifest, will aid that. So it's interesting. Like, I have memories of like going through some of these initiations and stuff. And basically they were mostly around the confrontation and acceptance of death and the darkest parts of us. Basically trying often to make it seem like our life was at stake as much as realistically as possible, if not like actual, like some wacky stuff went on. I'll just say that. Some wacky things happened with people playing with death, really. And there are so many schools and mystery schools, and so many that aren't even like, people don't even know what they are because their name haven't been talked about. Only their members are familiar. They don't have a lodge or something. And a lot of them are like families. So it's just a family that passes down their information, that type of thing. So there's all this interesting information about that, and that's what's really important, actually, and the reason I'm bringing it up is that the human aspect of us, or the part that we think is awakening, we tend to think of it as the ego self is waking up, because we are forming a more balanced ego, so we can see improvements in our ego and identity, and so we kind of think that that's what's waking up, but actually not really. That isn't a being, so it can't wake up. The ego is like always in that way, like it's always part of the illusion, the identity aspect. Even when we're higher up, we are interacting with each other in higher densities of consciousness and astral bodies, whatever, separation is seen as an illusion, but we are aware that there's seemingly separate beings still. So we participate where we're at. But there's an awareness that separation couldn't be as well. But the awakening process happens at like the precise times. Like, some people say things like apple cider vinegar helps with pineal gland. And I think it does. But it's kind of like if the soul is going to call for some type of physical aid, it's usually because the being doesn't believe that that spirit could just go. Like we talk about calcified pineal glands, and then we think that God couldn't just heal it like that. Like, why wouldn't God just heal it, right? The reason is because you don't believe in it. That's the reason that it's calcified, is that you don't believe in it. People attribute it to like fluoride and whatever, and it is true that these things affect our bodies, but to the adept, nothing affects me. The illusion does not affect me. Boom. Out. Nothing. So now there is something to say to the etheric body and what we ingest and how that affects the etheric body. But again, that's still part of the illusion. That those bodies are part of the separation illusion as well. And they can also all be healed and reconfigured. So like in a moment of just healing. And we've seen spontaneous healing all over the place, right? So it's sort of obvious that there is that capacity for miracles to happen. And it's essentially our own blocks to things like our calcified pineal gland or whatever we think is going on with us. A lot of times too, we're just making shit up because we're reading it, like, or seeing somebody talk about it on the internet or something, and it's not even real. The amount of stuff that I see that's just not at all real is like, so when I say apple cider vinegar helps with the pineal gland, but then I'm also saying, that's still all part of the illusion, right? So it's not real. But it does that substance does have an effect on the pineal gland. But it's not real. But then there's other degrees of just pure nonsense that just don't do what their people are saying. It's just not true. So it's fun. It's fun. But there's a whole bunch of chats, so I'm going to jump into that. He says, I think another way to look at it is everyone and everything is special. Yep. To be able to share that specialness with everyone. Yep. Yeah, when everyone is special, it's perfect because no one is special. In fact, in Course in Miracles, calls relationships that we encounter that we elate above others special relationships, which essentially they're saying that those are where we're going to have lessons because we're insane. Because we're perceiving a higher degree of importance on this person. We're making them special, which is actually detrimental. Not detrimental, but it's going to lead us to lessons. Unless we can go, oh, I get it. They're not like crucial to my life that way. Like, the attachment essentially it will cause it to be a special relationship. And so these relationships will bring us challenges. But yeah, so it's if basically everyone is special and unique, so infinitely so that no one could actually be specialer or more uniquer, right? Like that. Thanks, Michael. 9 cents says, oh snap, never ending story since I was little when the part came, Atreyu. Atreyu had to traverse the 2 giant statues with the laser eyes, yeah. Pure of heart could cross. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's representing the abyss. I believe. There's 2 primary energies that clash with each other sort of in the abyss. And you could say that you get blasted by these energies in a way, and depending on your polarity and your your presence in yourself, basically, your fearlessness, even, really, that's really what it is. Fearlessness, your Christed presence, really, determines like how you go through that. Like, basically, if you go into the abyss, it's a spooky kind of place. If you go there and then you're experiencing wacky stuff and you're scared, then you're gonna essentially turn around and run away, or that type of thing. You're like, oh, forget this. That guy on the internet said it was gonna be nuts, but this is way more nuts than I thought it was. And it's interesting too, because it appears a little different for everyone. But yeah, there's a reason that all of us probably, when we saw that, we're like, oh, like we have a remembering of what's being shown. I think I remember having the same experience. Sarah T says, the times I felt like God made a mistake or that I was dealt a poor hand was when I was unwilling to accept that my obstacles to peace were rooted in my own lessons, and I put the dang obstacle there. Yeah, we put our own obstacles. It's mostly like self-sabotage, and like just we get ideas about how things are, and then often we're just totally wrong, and we do weird stuff. We do weird stuff. We have to be able to like see it. It's perfect that you're seeing it. And even still, I'll say I still do this. Like, I still notice an issue, and then I realize, usually after, like, oh, I believed this or this. That's why that must be there. I get it. I can see it now. And I'm like, wow, but it's still there. I still have to like handle the thing. And but yeah, I'm more familiar that, yeah, I did that. I can see that I did that. I don't know what I was thinking, right? Theodora, yeah, you cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically what Einstein was saying, right? Maybe that's what you're saying. Maybe that's what he said. I'm not sure. I'm horrible with quotes. My 9 cents says, maybe some kind of symbolism, how everyone says you bridge the gap through the heart chakra to the higher chakras. I wish I could have the chance to cross those laser eyes for real. Yeah. Oh yeah. So you just said it. Yeah, that is the abyss. It is most of our like really good artworks, Chronicles of Narnia, the Bible, right? Torah, Quran, all of these things, Bhagavad Gita, Game of Thrones, even. All of these things will contain deep symbols within them of these things that we're talking about. And what happens is, like, when we go to actually do it, we realize, oh my God, this is the stuff. This is what I've been like seeing in movies and things, and it's like kind of real. And it's interesting. It's an interesting experience. But it's also, this is why the initiates would like teach it to each other. Like the adepts and initiates and masters, they'd get together and they'd teach it all. It's a bunch of work, usually, to energize the spheres, and then to bring the consciousness up and to penetrate in through the veil, to get into the next area of consciousness, you could say. There are many frameworks on these concepts. So most of them, though, all revolve around the same idea, which is that the planets are all like within us, and energies within us. So, like Saturn is connected to a within us, right, and the sun and all of that stuff. That we are the solar system itself, sort of connected into it that way. And so we're drawing on these different spheres and purifying these spheres so that we can build these particular regions of consciousness, which is very similar to what I was talking about with the discipline of the personality. It's sort of the same thing, but that's in the mind. So this is in like your energy body, you could say. The terms are challenging to work with. But I'm not even sure why I'm getting all into that. I just kind of ramble, but people seem to like it most of the time. Sarah says, trying to craft a happy dream thing feels like when I remember there's a blueprint for a life behind our wildest dreams, and we have to get out of the way and drop the things we've cultivated that come between us and the dream, beyond our wildest dreams, because we can't fathom it with the human mind. And we have to surrender to the rearranging of our life to embody divine will. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like we craft the like the wildest dreams, and we can get super wild with it. But a lot of those wild dreams also are they're like things that the society told us we're just like, yeah, the society likes this, I guess I like that too. And like it sort of gets crunched into these dreams of, what we consider to be successful, happy, whatever. But then we realize that stuff, lots of the stuff in our dream, we don't even really care about. We just think we do, basically. And so like, thank God that the universe is there to go, I know you're saying that your dream is to like be a model in a mansion or something, be like a model or a fancy fashion show person in like some mansion. But I know that you would hate that. You would hate that. So I'm just going to make sure that we get you on the right track, sort of thing, right? So we have lots of that stuff too. Yeah, it's fun. Mud Chat just got here and I can tell this is what I need to hear. That's awesome. Sarah says, looking at the moon and blasting awake. Oh, when I was about 6 years old, I was looking at the moon and clairaudiently heard you have a destiny. Because of that, I always knew there was more to life. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. I said the thing at the moon because me and the moon have a bit of a fling going on. We have like a love and a hate relationship. The moon has mostly in metaphysical circles, like most people will have a kind of an opinion on the moon, and she's it was the moon. I looked at the moon when I had my awakening as well. I was staring up at a full moon, and then I had a Kundalini awakening. So sort of a similar experience. And then they said the same thing, like, you have a thing you're supposed to do now. And I was like, shit. I thought I was actually dying though. So I was sort of confused because I'm like, it seems like I'm dying. So I mean, if I'm dying, then I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I could still hear this voice just telling me to chill out. Mud Chat says, yes, so much. I want to be in, not in and out of realizing everything is okay and dreams can be made a reality. Yep. Mud Chat says, when I was about 7, I had a profound, clear download that we each could reach our potential easily if we knew who we were. And a clear sense of, yeah, human big potential. Yeah, exactly. That's the main thing, is that none of us know who we are. Most of us, even still, myself included, are like still exploring what we even are. And I don't think that we will know properly here. I don't think at the human consciousness, I don't think we grasp it until we die. And some of us remember dying and having these graspings or revelatory experiences after death, but they also then are sort of veiled by language and stuff. We can't really describe properly things. So it's like, that's why I think that's the main reason I think that, at least right now, human consciousness can't really grasp it, because people can't express properly what love is here. We don't know how to talk about it properly yet. We can demonstrate it, and so people can experience it, but we can't like teach it, really. Does that make sense? So consciousness, I think it evolves to this place where we can't even really talk about the development anymore. Um, but it is the most important thing. Know thyself. That's really all there is to know, right? Know thyself, to know God, and know the kingdom of heaven. Since my chat says, since I have been knowing thyselfing, now I'm overprepared and wheels are on the ground again, but still spinning out, self-sabotage. Yeah. Overprepared. That's an interesting way to frame it. Yeah, I've felt like that a little bit. Like it seems like I might be going a little quick for the reality or something, and that's probably why it's frustrating for me sometimes. But part of that is me thinking the realities that actually that's. Thank you for saying this, because I got to this just now. Me thinking the reality is not going the right pace is not real, right? Like if the reality is going the right pace, it couldn't be any other way, right? It couldn't be going the wrong pace. So I'm compassionately confirming for you that I have the same frustrations, I think, while also saying that our frustrations aren't real. I hope you can see where I'm coming from. Sarah says, as far as what we ingest affecting our bodies, I do believe we can be intuitively guided to eat something or use something that our light body can utilize yet to aid in our healing. Have to participate. Exactly. Guided to fast or sleep more. Exactly. So it's challenging for me to describe it, but we become a vibration of, let's say, we need to fast. The mind will perhaps we'll just have a conversation with someone. They'll give us the benefits of fasting, and the mind goes, oh, I have an idea. I'm going to fast. But really what happened was Spirit's like, we're going to fast, and we have to make it seem like the identity just decided it. So essentially, when we need to fast, Spirit brings us to fast, is what I'm trying to say. And we can choose to fast from the mind, really, but probably the Spirit is there wanting us to fast. And depending on how aware we are of that process, we can get more out of the fast, essentially, is what I've seen. So yeah, Spirit calls for the fast, and then the mind makes up a reason for it. It definitely affects things. Definitely. And definitely Spirit calls for things, for sure. I guess there is what I'm trying to highlight for people, I think, is that there is a stage of consciousness where we wouldn't actually need to fast to do these things. These biological processes that we sort of believe have to happen the way they're happening don't actually have to happen that way. So of course, our mind then has to be quite correctly organized to be able to do that. That's a type of thing a yogi might do, or like Jesus, right? Just spontaneously heal the body from whatever, fast, secrete whatever it needs, literally just, let it go. I think it's Kriya Yoga that they do that type of stuff. I could be totally wrong. I haven't studied that stuff. But I like to talk about the next level as well. So we can keep it in perspective that I'm one of the main things I try to advocate for is even as we're doing this, I need a coffee right now, or I don't, or whatever it is, right? Or for me, I should not have coffee because the stimulants of caffeine, it messes with me. But I still drink it because whatever. Right? I don't give myself a hard time about these things because it's just I have enough pressure on myself from my own nonsense. Then I don't need to add more to it, just So that's my personal orientation, but Spirit might be like, no, Sean, you need to stop caffeine right now. And I would, try to do that, right? But it's not something that I would say that isn't real. However, there's also an aspect of it where Like I'm consuming an illusion. Like the stuff that's happening isn't real and isn't really actually happening as well at the higher layer of truth. So while I'm here, of course, I participate and I play. I just like to remind myself, isn't this interesting that I think I'm about to have a sip of this drink. It tastes real. Like kind of like Morpheus, I think is his name, in the Matrix, eating the steak. He's like, I know it's not real, but yum, yum, right? It's kind of like that, doing that all the time to condition the mind to understand that's how we condition it to know that it's a lucid dreamer now, if that makes sense. That's the method I have been going. And so far it's pretty good. There are some challenges. I'm sure there's many methods to do this, to like reprogram the mind. But that's one I recommend is like, so even when we're doing stuff, we have particular purposes and it's great that we're doing it. We then remember, but we're not really doing anything. It sort of takes the oomph out of what we're doing though, doesn't it? Right? Well, then why am I even doing it? That's part of the point of it. Is like, if it's not going to achieve something, why am I doing it? Because it seems to achieve this thing. Do I care about that? It makes us like question the whole thing. That's why I like that technique. It makes us go like, as long as we can be authentic with ourselves. Yeah. Theodora said, can you please talk about seeing Christ in others? After my spiritual awakening, I would see someone in them that would talk to me and I know it wasn't them. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So a couple things can happen like that. Like you can also just be developing clairaudience, like where you're hearing thoughts, or you could be hearing, it depends on your experience specifically, but it's possible that you're hearing the Christ. It depends on really what they're saying, to be honest, and what the vibe is, like what you're feeling. But lots of clairaudience starts with like for me, when it started for me, I'd be like, excuse me, what? What'd you say? Did you just call me a, like, and they're like, I didn't say anything. And I bet you they're thinking, how the fuck did he know? Right? Because I heard them. I don't know what causes the loudness of it or not, or why for me it's spontaneous. I don't try to hear these things. I don't tend to hear the Christ in others. I tend to try to sort of see it. I see it behind generally the eyes, but even just looking at them, I can sense the light behind the threshold of the veiling, the skin or whatever, the membrane of the illusion, the density of the illusion. So that's one way, but more it's about, I would say, framing your perspective around every single other person you ever look at as there is a Christ in them. It doesn't matter really if I can't see it right now. The goal is to just realize it's there. They're actually speaking. Feels like the Christ connection. It's like a knowing. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a different thing. Yeah, that sounds like you're recognizing it. Like you get that feeling of recognition. It feels like home, sort of. Like it feels like time might stop. Everything's very safe. And because of that, we can actually be a bit weird with them. And in hindsight, we'll be like, wow, yeah, that was a little weird. Like I would wanted to hug them, right? and that's weird, right? Yeah. Aaron L says, the way I physically feel energetic intentions within people is one that really dominates my experience. It's fascinating to feel someone around the corner. Yeah, I get that too. My son plays this game where he hides from me, and he is amazed that I always walk straight to his place of hiding. He's 11. He can't figure out how I do it. And I tell him every time, I'm like, I can feel where you are. And he's like, that can't be real. So he's like testing me all the time. He just hides. And then I feel him. And then I just open like the closet or something, right? And he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I told you I'm a wizard, bro. And those are the answers I give him. I'm like, I'm a wizard. I know stuff sometimes. Most of the times I don't. And he's like, you don't even know how to make a grilled cheese. Right? I do know how to make a grilled cheese, by the way. He used to say I didn't. I proved him wrong. Theodora says, it was very unnerving at first. I guess I got used to it after a while. But what you said earlier was the closest I can find similar. Yeah. So, yeah, the recognition of the light within someone else is a really profound experience, very deep. It can happen with strangers, but what we want to do is condition ourselves to know that it's always there. Like it's always there in the other, even if they're being absolutely bananas. It's hard for us to see it, but we just remind ourselves that it is there. Like the Christ is within them, of course, right? So whatever's happening, we can try to hold that perspective of what they are in truth. If we can, like it's not, it's not like we should beat ourselves up if we can't, but we should try to consider why we couldn't do that for that time. Like if we could, especially if we see it in strangers, but we can't see it, it's actually a little easier to see in strangers because there's no weird energies built up karmically. So you're just looking at a person and you're just like, whoa, I see. I can see clearly now. Right? When the moon's full, it's been rough. Yeah. Yeah, the moon messes with me. Lunacy. The moon is me and the moon. Mudchat says I resonate with Sean and all of you big time. Thank you, Mudchat. Gargansul says no pressure. I think I was talking about pressure with caffeine and stuff. Yeah, no pressure. Mudchat says the yoga, the purity, all of it. While it works, definitely it isn't necessary to ascend. Exactly. Yeah, like becoming a master in the illusion or a master of the illusion is a really cool thing to do. Demonstrating a lot of really cool things. And one of the things that yogis did is like showcase miracles all over the place. And that's sort of what inspired all of this seeking is like, they're like superpowers. They're like heroes, right? Sort of spiritual heroes, you could say. So that was a large thing that got built around it. And then the relationship between the guru and their disciple is such a profound, beautiful relationship, like a soul connection. Like I would say even like a lot of people talk about like twin flames and things. I would say that like the guru and disciple relationship is like really tight like that. Like the way people would imagine a twin flame might be if it's two people, right? The flames inside of us, of course, right? But when people are imagining like a union with another being, like the guru is, that's what comes to mind as beings that are actually doing that physically, or not physically, but expressing that as like unioning almost, melding consciousnesses, telepathy, all these cool things. And I'm sure that there are some partners that get together and do that. So, sorry, I'm just trying to get through the chat here. Sarah says, oh yeah, I agree with the fact that we eventually come to a place where we don't need to do as much to participate in our light body. Yeah, body signals. Yeah, exactly. It's like we, that's a good way to put it. It's like we are paying attention to it and we're moving, we're getting more and more involved in what we're doing. We start to naturally, like for me, my diet changed and everything too. Like everything just shifts almost naturally. I've never been a disciplined person in the way of like I force myself to eat this way or that way or exercise, even any of that shit. Never ever have I done any of that. Like I tried a bit to like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be strong. I'm gonna be a big boy. And I'm not making fun. I'm just making fun of my own sensations about myself. My cousin is like massive, and I was like, I want to be like him. But then I'm like, oh, but look at all the work that is. Like, I don't have time for that. I got too much to think about. I don't know. That's my excuse. But I'm not out of shape either, really. Like I'm not. I've recently lost like 50 or 60 pounds, and I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything at all, really. I didn't change anything. I just like stopped eating like a dump truck, basically. But I know I didn't even consciously choose that either. That's where I'm getting at. It's like the vibration shifts, the frequencies shift, the consciousness shifts, and then it calls for different stuff, basically. Yeah. So it's super important to pay attention to what we're calling for. Yeah, absolutely. Theodora says it's so weird, especially because the person has no clue that it just happened. Yeah. It is weird. It weirds people out a lot. Like, and when those things have happened to me sometimes, I've gone into like these, we call them ceremonies perhaps, and I raise my consciousness perhaps like too much or something. And then I'm walking around in the world and like, I can't properly interact with people because I'm too in love with everything. It's too weird for people. Like I have to chill out. Like it's weird. It makes people uncomfortable. I thought it would be the opposite. And it is the opposite for a lot of people. A lot of people come right to me. Homeless people, children, dogs, animals and birds and stuff. I had a couple hawks flying beside my window the other day. And not that I'm special, but I'm trying to highlight that consciousness, when it's resonating a high frequency, it's resonating, it attracts innocence towards it. Basically, innocent light, you could say. It's people that are more like perturbed by things or more freaked out by the world are like, get out of here. Something about that guy bugs me. And they'll figure out something to freak them out. Probably. Aaron L says, it's lovely hearing about the variety of our different experiences here that may take a different route than mine, but ultimately is still the same path when it leads to God. The moon definitely affects me so much, usually lifts me up amazingly under the full moon, then drags me emotionally when it's leaving that fullness. Yeah, mine seems to be back and forth. I'm not really ever sure what's going to happen with the moon. I've had some moons that are like fine. Eclipses, though, also get me. And yeah, the same path. It always leads to God, right? Garganzul says, Archangel Michael has interesting things to say about courage. Yeah. Muscle wizardry is a different discipline. Muscle wizardry. I'm going to give you guys an example of my wizardry practice. The time that I peed myself. This is a fun little story. COVID was on and I was in a mall and they had like closed one of the bathrooms and closed a whole bunch of the mall. And I had to get to a bathroom. So I'm like walking to the bathroom, not thinking much of it. But for me, when I have to go pee, it's a big deal. It's sudden. It's pretty sudden. I've been probably ignoring the signals from the body because I'm not too into the body that much. And then it becomes sort of an emergency. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a body, I gotta pee. It's kind of like that. That sounds like fantastical or something, but it is actually kind of like that. So I feel that I have to pee, and I decide that I'm gonna go to the bathroom, but the bathroom's closed. So I'm like, okay, shoot, I'm probably gonna pee myself. It's probably happening. And I'm like, oh, I'm a wizard. So I start to do a magic practice as I'm walking to try to find the peace and like essentially reassert control over the parts inside of me that might influence the urine to come out. But because I didn't know what I'm doing, and I'm not a master of the body this way, all I did was put love and peace into my stomach and all the areas all down there. I just pieced it all out, and I just released and peed myself. Because all the tension that was holding the urine back was released. So, that was my magical practice, was to make myself pee myself. You're welcome. You're welcome for that story. So I did something. It was effective, and I learned a lesson. I was right in the middle of a parking lot. Just pee myself. Luckily, nobody saw, but I had to get into the car and drive away. And, you know, the amount of laughter I had at myself, though, I laughed the entire way home. Aaron L. says, my diet has naturally shifted as well. I only eat 2 meals a day at most now, in smaller portions, no chocolate. Yeah, exactly. We just sort of stop. I don't really eat chocolate. We just sort of stop. You know, my habits, though, are still not great. Like, I still drink, like, energy drinks and stuff. They're horrible for me. But, you know, I think I feel a lot of people, too, have felt really tired lately. And that's, I think, I'm compensating. I feel tired, so I'm, like, trying to pep myself up in the old way I used to. And it's having other effects as well that are bugging me. So, like, irritability a little bit. Like, overstimulated a little bit. So, you know, I can see that I shouldn't be doing it, but I'm doing it. Yeah, so I think that's a good time probably to end. Oh, that's an hour and 22 minutes. So yeah, I think that's a good time to end. Thank you guys so much for all your questions, all of the awesome stuff. I hope you enjoyed my tale of me peeing my pants. You know, hopefully, you know, it almost happened again. But I was like, oh, wait, we don't do that. We actually want to focus on constricting a little bit. We don't want to be empowering and peaceful to the areas of the body that are meant to be holding back urine. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you. Sending all the blessings. Solid Deo Gloria.